Hi YouTube and welcome to this new video. In this video I'm going to be talking about a very interesting topic, for me at least, and I'm sure that it's going to spark your interest once you learn more about it, which is the cloud functions in GCP. So basically cloud functions is a serverless offering or product that is available on GCP, on Google Cloud Platform, that's going to allow you to host your code and to host your small functions or anything that you want to execute based on time triggers or other events triggers, such as uploads to Google Cloud Storage or pub/sub messages, for example, or even HTTPS or HTTP triggers. You can create a function and have multiple ways to trigger this function to execute your workflow and your code. So this is exactly what I'm going to show you now. And the scenario here is I want to show you how you can start and stop virtual machines in GCE based on an HTTP triggered function. Now, the point of this is this might be a simple thing, it might be a basic thing, but it will allow you to do a lot of automation actually on GCE, Google Compute Engine. You will be able to delegate some activities to other people without giving them access to the actual GCP project in here, without exposing the resources, without them seeing all of these settings and activities. Simply you can create a cloud function and then you can give them the URL for this function. You can expand, which I will talk about it at the end of this video. You can expand on that function or on this one that I'm going to show you and add your own customizations or your own scripts and so on. So the scenario that I'm going to do here is I have a single VM that is already created and it's up and running now. In this single VM, I'm going to create two functions. One will start and the other one will stop the VM. So the requirements for this are very simple and straightforward. First of all, of course, you should have a GCP project, which is the one that I'm showing you. And also you should have the billing enabled on this project because you will need to use the cloud functions. Although cloud functions has its own free tier, but you still need to have billing enabled, because if you go beyond the free tier, then they should charge you for the additional use and all of this. And also you will need some environment variables such as the project ID and also the VM name that I've shown you and the zone of that VM. Now the VM name and the zone can easily be grabbed from this VM instances page, but then this table that you see is containing the setting to change the columns. So in the instance that the columns are changed and if you're not seeing the zone, for example, you can just go inside the VM properties and then you can still see the name on top and the zone, you can see it a little bit down in the middle of the page. This is how you can get the three required information: the project ID, the VM name, and the zone of the VM. You also need to have the Cloud Functions API enabled, of course. I think this comes enabled by default once you create the GCP project and enable the billing on it. And also you need to manually enable the Cloud Build API. And then, just for sake of control and security, you will need a dedicated service account so that you can grant the required permissions for this service account and then you can use it with the cloud function. Now the required permissions for this service account are the compute instance admin version 1, because there are multiple, or there are two versions of this, I think. I'll be showing you how you can create the service account and assign the permissions for it as well in a bit now. Now, if you don't have the project, of course, you need to create it. Creating the project is a very simple and straightforward process. You just go to the project selector on top. If you don't already see the prompt to create a project, so you just click here and then click the create a project or new project. That will take you to the project creation page, and also the option to assign the billing account will be there if you have a paid billing account. So that's for the prerequisites. Now, as to how to start deploying this, I actually need to show you the script that I'll be using. So I have hosted the two scripts in my GitHub. If you go to this URL, I will be putting that in the video description. You will find three files. So the requirements.txt, I will come to it after a while. This contains the call to the Python library, the Python API library of GCP that we're going to use to trigger the VM start and stop. And then the two scripts, startvm.py and stopvm.py. So these are just for your reference, but in the actual script, we're going to create a file called main.py. So inside that file, we'll put these few lines of the code. So basically, this is the call to import the API library. And then this is the VM start function, our method. And this is the definition or the call to the API, and then that's the actual execution for the VM. And then it will just return the result on the page so that we can see the actual call results, which is just a JSON payload. And we can go from here to expand on it, and you can change or format the output a little bit, but just for sake of simplicity, I'm returning the full result here, so that you can see the full result body and the content of that body. Same goes for the stop VM. It's the exact same code, except the name of that and also the actual method, which is stop. The other one, it was start, so that's the only difference between those. So now in order to get started, as mentioned, we have already created the project, we have already assigned the billing, and then we will need to create the service account. So to create a service account, you'll have to go to the menu, the navigation menu, and then go to I am an admin and then service accounts. In the service accounts, we will see the available service accounts, including the default compute engine service account. Now, you can enable or you can use the default service account for the app engine or the cloud functions, but I really don't recommend that you use this, because if you use the default service account, you will lose the ability to customize and control the permissions for that specific service account. And if multiple functions are using the same service account, then if you change that service account, you will affect these functions and you will affect the other functions. You really don't want to do this. So it's recommended that you have a service account for each function, or for each group of functions at least, if they are doing some shared activities or some sort of workloads that are sharing the purpose of the activities. So at least you can group them by service accounts or have a dedicated service account for each of these. But I really don't like using the default service account here. So it's very simple. We'll click create a service account. Then we'll just need to fill the service account details, mainly the name and the email. And then we need to grant it the permissions, which is done from here or from the IAM page. I'll just do it from here as a shortcut. So the name of this one, you can just do whatever name that you want. It's a good idea that you put some name to make sure that you know what is the service account for and why it is being used and all of that. So in my case, I'll just put something like this, CF for cloud functions, and then service account, SA, then VMs, start and stop. You will see the email, it's actually being already filled for me, or the service account ID. Then if you want to put some description, it's fine. Otherwise, for me, the name is self-explanatory, so I don't really need to put any description. It's a good practice that you put descriptions anyway. Then I will click create and continue. And as mentioned, the only permission that I need to grant to this service account is the compute instance admin version 1. So I will open the select role window or dialog, and then in the search I will type compute, that's if I can type properly, compute instance admin. So as you can see, there are two versions of this, compute instance admin beta and compute instance admin v1. We want to use this one, because this is the one that's containing the permissions that we want to have for the service account. Now you can get more granular on this. You can really only grant the 3 or 2 required permissions, which is instance start, instance stop, or instance restart. And that's by going to manage roles, and then by creating a custom role and just assigning the specific permission that you really need. Because also it's a good practice and it's a good idea that you assign the least required permission and the least required privilege here. So if you can see, like, if you can filter, just for this to load a little bit. So if you can filter the compute.instances.start, this is the starting permission, and we have the stop, and I'm not sure if there is a restart or something. So we have reset as well. So you can go to this level by only granting these 3 permissions if you want. Otherwise, you can just use the default permission, which is the one that is called, or the compute instance admin. Now I actually left that assignment page, so I have to go to the IAM, and in the IAM I have to grant that service account the required permission. So now if I go to add, and when I type the cf the dash, you will find that it's giving me the auto completion for the service account. Then the role, I need to select the compute instance admin version 1, and that's it. So this is the only required permission for the service account to work with our scenario. And next step is to have the APIs enabled. So the first one, of course, is the Cloud Functions API, because we're going to use it. So we'll go to the navigation menu, and there are 2 ways to enable the API. The best way to do it is through the APIs and services, because we're going to enable also the Cloud Build API. So in the APIs and services, go to library. In the library, we will first of all search for Cloud Functions. That's doing the auto search for us, and we should see the Cloud Functions API now. So this is the one that we need to choose, and when you go inside it, we will see the option to enable it. So when we click enable, it's going to do its thing, and then it's going to be enabled for us. You can enable this automatically by going to the navigation menu and then going to the serverless section, then just click Cloud Functions. It's going to do the same in the backend, but then it's a good idea that you know what's going on behind the scenes as well, so that in the future you can just go there and enable it while knowing what's going to happen in the backend. So that's for Cloud Functions API. Now we need to also enable it we need to enable the Cloud Build API. So going back to library, same goes for the Cloud Build. You just type Cloud Build, and we should see the result, which is Cloud Build API. This is the first result. So we go inside it again, and we need to enable this one. So now we have enabled the required APIs, and we have the service account ready. Then we need to start creating the Cloud Function. So for this, we have to go to the navigation menu. Then, as mentioned, we go to Cloud Functions. In Cloud Functions, we have to create a new function. Basically, we'll need to create 2 functions, one to start the VM and the other one to stop it. So creating the function is very simple. We just click Create Function. And this is the starting function. So I will name it something that will indicate that it's the VM start. So VM. Then you choose whatever region that you want to host it. And as mentioned in the beginning, this might stay forever in the free tier of the Cloud Functions, because I'm sure that you're not going to trigger it hundreds of times per day to start and stop the VM. So you can trigger it once or 2 times per day, or even like probably 5 or 6 times, I don't know, but you're not going to go beyond this, most likely. So this should stay in the free tier, although the VM cost that you're going to manage, that's something else, but the actual function, it's not and it's going to be nothing. So then the trigger part, and as mentioned, you can have many triggers for this cloud function. So the default is HTTP trigger, but you can then do cloud PubSub, the cloud storage, Firestore, or any of these, triggers and events. In my case, I'm going to stick with the HTTP, and I will require HTTPS. And then, just for the sake of this test and demonstration, I'm going to say allow unauthenticated invocations. In your production case, in your real life, you should never do this unauthenticated invocations unless you really want to create a public function. Because if I keep it to unauthenticated invocations and after this video I forgot to delete this function or disable it or anything, and when people start to abuse this URL, then really anyone can just navigate to this URL and the content of the function will be executed, and it's going to be a very bad experience for me and for, let's say, if I had a business application there or a workflow with this function. Yeah, you don't really want to be there. So it's very important that you make sure you require authentication, or if you have to set it to unauthenticated invocations, then you will need to put some sort of an authentication before the users reach the function, which is something that I'm planning to show you as an extension or as a next video for this. So I'll be talking about IAP, Identity Aware Proxy, and how you can secure endpoints with this, including cloud functions and other stuff as well. So I will keep it to unauthenticated invocations for now. Then I will click Save. Then I will have to click the runtime, build, and connection settings because I need to change the default service account. So as you see, it's assigning the default service account for the App Engine service. So I don't really want to use this. I will use my own service account, which is the one that I have created just now, and assign the permissions to it. That's it. Then I will click Next. This is going to take me to the code page where I have to put my script and my code. So first of all, I will change the runtime to Python 3.8. I haven't tested this with Python 3.9. I've done it with Python 3.8. You're really welcome to test it with 3.9 if you want. So the first step here is the start script. I want to get rid of this because I don't want to use the default hello world thing. Then I will go to the GitHub and then open the start VM script, and I will just copy this and go back to the GCP page and paste it. Then you notice the requirements.txt, and if you go back to GitHub, you'll find a single requirements.txt file. That's because, again, these two scripts are the exact same except for the method, which is start or stop. So if you go inside it, you'll find that it's only calling for one library, which is the Google API Python Client Library 1.10. So that's the library that I'm using. So I'm copying this, then going back to Cloud Functions, then going back to or going into requirements. I'm just going to replace this content with the actual library that I want to use. The final step here that is left for me is going back to main.py and then change the entry point here to be the start VM entry point. So copying this, I need to do Control-C and then Control-V to paste it here. And that's it. So this is the start function is ready now. I will just need to click deploy to have it deployed, and then I can create the other function. Just a little note here, if you don't see this view, you need to make sure that you are selecting the inline editor as the source code, because you can upload it from a zip file or from a cloud source repository or from the cloud storage, but these are just a very few lines so that you can use the inline editor. And actually, just before doing the deployment, I really need to change these variables. So to do that, let me duplicate the tab here, and then let me go back to the dashboard of this project to get the project ID and the VM name and zone. So going to cloud or to the dashboard of this project, Google Cloud Platform, if you click on this logo, it will take you to the dashboard. This is the project ID. So right click and copy. Now just a little tip and trick for you as well. If you want to save time and take the project ID, you can also find it in the URL of the page that you are in. So as you can see the project here, this is the project ID that I have. That's the exact value. So you can have it from the URL or from the dashboard. I just wanted to open this new tab so that I can also navigate to the compute engine so that I can get the VM name and zone. So going back to Cloud Functions, I will paste the project ID here. I need to press Ctrl V. Then I need to go and get the zone and the VM name. So going to compute engine. This is the zone, which is US Central 1A. So I will replace it with this. Then I need to copy the VM name, which is app VM-01. That's it. Now I'm ready to deploy the script and create the stop script. So I'll click deploy. It will take me out of this page and into the Cloud Functions homepage where I can create my second script. So the second script is the exact same process. I will click create function, but this time I will name it as stop VM. Then I will just keep it in US Central 1, and again I will do it as HTTP with an authenticated invocations and HTTPS. I'll save these and then I will use the previous service account. Then next. Now I need to change into Python 3.8 and let me delete this. I'm going back to GitHub, getting the stop function. Then going into requirements.txt, going here and then taking that library as well. Then back into main.py, I will change the endpoint. Then the project ID as mentioned, now I'll take it from the URL here. So this is the project ID. Then the zone, it's actually there. So this is the zone. And this is the VM name. And as you can see, this is the stop method. And with this, we are ready to deploy this function now. Now, as you see, the VM is in the started state. So in this case, now we're going to test. I will invoke the stop script first of all, so that the VM is stopped. And then I will invoke the start script again, so that the VM is started. So just looking at the deployment status for this, it might take 1 or 2 minutes for the function to be deployed. So we'll have to wait it out so that, and then once it's deployed, we can test it and see the behavior. Okay, so the function has been deployed finally. And before starting to invoke it, I just want to take you inside it and then showing you what are the details there. So we have the metrics and the monitoring for this, but also there is the trigger tab where it will give you the trigger URL so that you can copy it and then use it in your applications or whatever workflow that you want. Also you have the logs. This is where you will see the activities and the invocations of the function, so that this is where you debug and troubleshoot if there are any issues, and where you will find the logs for this function. So this, let me now go to the trigger and copy the trigger URL. Notice the VM is in the started state as mentioned. So going to a new tab and then pasting this URL. Now it's going to load and it's going to give me the output, which is a JSON payload as mentioned. So it should list the operation here, and that operation is mentioned here, the operation type. So the operation type is stop, and this is the progress of this. Of course, it's 0% because it's just being called, so it's not going to show anything. Now, if I go back to the VM instances and if I refresh the view here, you should see it stopped. So the instance is stopped, and this is what we actually wanted. Now, if I go back to the function and when I go to logs, you should see the entries for the invocation that I have done. So now it's going to show you the function execution started, and then the function execution took 3.5 seconds if you just want to round it, and the status code, which is 200, which is okay. So that's the stop. Now going back to the home page of the Cloud Functions, going to start the VM. Again, going to the trigger to take the URL, and then pasting this and going to the URL. We should now see the same output, but the operation type is going to be set to start. And when I go to the cloud, to the GCE, to the VM instances view, when I refresh, I should see the VM now is in the running state. So that's all what it takes to automate this process. There are a lot of ways that you can expand on this. You can create some sort of a control panel, or we can create some sort of a UI where users can trigger the VM. You can add, or you can read or add the project ID into the actual request as a parameter, so that you can probably expand this to all of the VMs, for example, in the project. Or probably you can add more features as mentioned, like restarting the VM, or probably adding labels, or anything like this. And these are all things that I'm going to show you in the next videos. So I'll be doing some additional videos as a follow-up for this, including the adding more features and doing some sort of a control panel. But more importantly, you can secure it more by either doing IAP or by requiring the authenticated requests. And just as a reference, I will put the link in the video description as well. If you want to secure your functions with with authentications and authenticate each request or each invocation, there is this nice article about this process. It's talking about calling Cloud Functions from Kubernetes Engine. But what I want to show you in this article is this specific section or point where it will actually easily let you do it with curl, which is the command line. So this is how you do it from the Linux shell or command line. It's very straightforward because you will just need to pass this header, authorization bearer, and you can get the authentication token using this command. So if I can show you this, let me copy the command here. Then if I open CMD on my end, and when I paste this, this is the authentication token that my client is using. So I can't show you all of that, but this is the one that is being used to authenticate all of the requests of Google Cloud into GCP. So when I attach this to any request that I'm making, then it means this request is authenticated and it's being trusted by the Cloud Function. This is something that I'll be showing you in the next videos, probably the next one or the one after that. So until then, hopefully this was useful for you. If this video was useful for you, please like it and subscribe and click that bell button so that you get notifications. I know I'm not posting a lot of content, but I'm doing my best to keep up with the pressure of the work and all what's going around. I'll do my best to post more content and to mix it between Google Workspace and GCP, and also to do some of these tips and tricks stuff that are very interesting actually, such as Cloud Functions or stuff about BigQuery and some automations and all of that. So if you have any question, also please don't hesitate to put it in the comments section. And if you have any feedback about anything that I do, also please don't hesitate to reach out to me. check out the course that I have on Google Workspace on Udemy. That's a very long course that contains a lot of details and a lot of points about probably everything that you need to do in Google Workspace. You can get it at a discounted price through the link that I'm going to paste in the video description. Please check it out and send me your feedback about it as well. Any feedback will help me keep the content improved and to help me fix any issues and stay on top of the quality. I'm doing my best to do this all of the time.